let's get ready to Royal Rumble and talk about it. What's going on, everyone? You've got me. It is the Dumble whose door is always open. Gandalf without the gray or the white because I'm all black. And Jordy LaForge captaining this enterprise. I am Left Eye E.G.O. And today we are joined by the OG of the Philly streets, the rock, paper, scissors people's champion, the dOGulas. How are you doing, good sir?
How are you doing, my friend, my good friend, who I don't see nearly as much anymore, but hopefully will in the future.
Yes, sir.
You're at my stolen wrestling persona swag, the V1 sign for Matt Hardy completely, but we just do it. We just started doing it one day, and my favorite wrestling shirt of all time, minus 5 stars, which every time I wear it, somebody's like, what does that mean? And I have to explain.
So, good, because it's always a great conversational piece.
I'm going to be your Bobby Heenan.
I'll take it. I'll take
it. Gorilla. I'll be your Bobby Heenan today. Or for younger fans, I guess I'll be your Corey Graves, I guess.
That'll work for the younger generation too, yeah. I guess. But guys, I've actually known dOGulas going on I think 10 years at this point. Maybe 10 years.
Close,
2013, 2014. Yeah, close to 10 years. So I tell everyone that most of the people that I've met, I did not meet them directly. I've always met through someone else, and dOGulas is no exception. So I knew Justin Ice maybe about 8 months, close to a year at this point. And we all usually use Star Trek references for a lot of things. And he was saying, I need you to meet my William Riker, my number 2 in charge of the Enterprise. And in fact, dOGulas is partly why I say I'm Jordy LaForge captaining the Enterprise, because we'd watch episodes and they'd be like, you're like Jordy LaForge. And I would say, I am like Jordy LaForge. And so we met, and this man, I didn't think he was Riker until I actually saw this man in action. Was not lying, just like William Riker. This man is hella smooth. He is a tribal leader of his squad. And watching this man when we were both in the single life, him getting women was like a lot like Crazy Stupid Love. Dude Miyagi'd the hell out of me with the game that he put me on. So on top of that, I did one of my residencies in Colorado for school. And when I graduated, I didn't even have a job lined up, but I drove with my father cross country from Fort Collins, Colorado to Philadelphia. And at the beginning, I stayed with Justin Ice. But I mean, at that point, he had his family. And I'm thinking, you know what? I don't want to at least be a burden on them to this point. So I'm just like, hey, you know what? You got a lot of things that are setting with your house. Like, let me not be a burden. Let me head out. And so I talked to dOGulas about it. Within 5 minutes, he's like, hey, come over. Don't have to pay me any rent. Nothing. We're good. No questions asked.
And you knew that was a good decision to make for the very fact that he actually let you do it, which is basically the fact that it happened, the fact that he allowed you to not to stay with somebody else is probably a good idea.
Right. Yes. So it was a great thing to happen for Justin Ice to actually mention it and for dOGulas to say yes. And I mean, this man was fantastic for the time that I was there. So I always will, be indebted to him for that. And when I started this channel, he was one of the first people that I wanted to have on. And so I'm actually glad that he took time out of his schedule to join us today. Besides the gushy stuff, we're getting to what we actually are trying to get into, which is the Royal Rumble and some wrestling related news. I wanted to cover this mainly because it's happening in my home city of San Antonio this year. And so that got me thinking about just the Royal Rumble and just certain questions that I know that people that may not follow wrestling as closely as dOGulas would ask, or even certain things that I've forgotten myself. So that's why I wanted to turn to this man. So, before we get to that, the first thing I wanted to double check with you on is what actually got you into wanting to watch professional wrestling in the first place?
Well, I'm old. Almost as old as Justin Ice. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit older than Justin Ice. But yeah, I vividly. So I'm old enough that I got started wrestling. I started watching wrestling in the end of the '80s, like 1989. Okay. And I don't have a clear first memory, but I definitely remember at some point just watching and seeing the Ultimate Warrior on TV, be completely enamored with. And I was always a little artist, so I was always drawing, even as a little kid. Like And so just the colors and the face paint and the look and the streamers, and he's running around like crazy and screaming and talking about the Warriors and the Rocky Fuel, and and the nosedive plane into the volcano, and you were parts unknown and all that shit. And I was like, my pupils were like dilated, like, oh, what is this? But at the same time, I became such a wrestling fiend because literally at the same time, I was like, oh, wrestling, cool. I want to watch this wrestling. Where is it? I would just find it wherever it was on TV. And then I saw Sting. This is before he was the Crow. Most people know him as the Crow, but they call it Surfer Sting, where he's all colorful and shit.
Oh yeah,
the neon colors. So basically, it was like two neon ray blasts in my brain that burned, that just stamped it and like burned it. Like, okay, you are a wrestling geek from this point on. So it was really that. It probably appealed to my little, nascent artist kind of thing. And then just I started watching it, and I guess if I had started watching football at that same time, then I would have been in love with football like a lot of people are. But that was this is my sport, full of neon clad, screaming, roided out freaks. Sorry, any wrestlers who may watch this someday.
Nah,
I've pissed off a few accidentally. This wouldn't be my first time.
That's fine. Just say it was E.G.O that did it to you, man.
Oh yeah.
But I was gonna say, on top of that, I mean, what has been your favorite just overall wrestling moment? Didn't matter if it was a dark show, a B match, or a house match where it wasn't really televised, or even something that you saw live or we all saw as a group with the crew. Like, what was your favorite wrestling moment?
I'm
pretty sure there are a lot.
Yeah, no, that's it. Like, I don't want to be cliche, but like, I really, it's one of these things where it's like, it's a major thing on dating profiles, like Wrestling Geek. Like, you're gonna hear about it. It's absorbed a major part of my life. Like, to pick one would be like, I don't even know. Like, as a little kid loving Ultimate Warrior, when he beat Hogan for the title, I remember in fifth grade lining up. I think it was fifth grade, lining up outside the school with the kids, like waiting to be let in the grade school, and just being like, "Did anybody see it? Did anybody watch it? Did anybody order it?" We didn't. My mom certainly wasn't going to order what. Like, did anybody watch it? What happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? And I was like, what did he look like? What was he wearing? What colors? Little artist too. I was like, ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, that's probably like the first major, like, oh my god, heart pounding moment for me as a fan, as a little kid. But since then, like, I've gone to shows. I've gone to shows. I haven't met too many wrestlers. I've met some, but it's way too many moments. I can never pick like a favorite. The most I could do is just share all the ones that I had, because there's just too much to whittle down to one. But that was the first. They call it a mark out moment, when you just completely lose your mind and just forget what you're watching and stuff.
I mean, that's more of things that we saw in the past. So I know now that we've currently got the Royal Rumble slated for, I believe, this Saturday, right?
Yep.
This Saturday, right? And so I'm checking just, more of, I used to be a little bit more of an aficionado when I was in Philly, and it's kind of dropped off a little bit since then, but I'm checking back into this because the Royal Rumble is going to be in my city, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Then I hear Vince McMahon is back in charge. I know it's been over a year, but Cody Rhodes left AEW and he's back with WWE. And then on top of that, Stephanie McMahon is stepping down, and now they're trying to sell the WWE to Saudi Arabia. Like, dude, what is happening? What did I miss? Please inform us, man.
Wow, you unpacked a lot there. Actually,
yeah, in whatever order you want to take it, please.
Stephanie stepped down after coming back after being let go. So there was even that's an onion. Yeah.
Her own dad let her go.
Yeah, well, he fired Shane earlier last year. This time last year, after the Royal Rumble last year. Yeah, I guess if we want to contextualize this all around the McMahons, like all last 2022 started the Royal Rumble last year. Like, Shane came back looking like a sweaty tomato, like he always does. Like, he's way too old to be doing this. Sorry, I didn't know you were drinking. Just sweating before he even got to the ring, as he is, because Shane McMahon is old now and needs to stop. Like, he put the Rumble together last year and it sucked. It was not a good Rumble and it wasn't very well. Yeah. And then Vince fired him the next day, and everybody's like, really? Looking back now, that was the first sign that, like, oh shit, this 2022 shit's going to go down in this company. We just didn't know it. But like the fact that he actually fired his own son after that, just because
Cold-blooded.
he wanted to eliminate Brock. It was like he had a lot of terrible ideas. It was a whole story in itself. But
Okay.
as it goes on, fast forward from there, like WrestleMania this past WrestleMania 38, Vince has an impromptu match, during the card and like looks terrible and starts to look like he's melting. He looks like a melting snowman every time he's on camera. He sounds like a melting snowman. His voice is just graveled, like you can't understand. He looked terrible. He's starting to look terrible. He's starting to look
Oh man.
He's all just like every time he's on TV, he's just like that's all you understand. That's all you hear is like you usually go like you're fired. Like no, it was just this low mucusy grumble basically. So I mean, and everybody can look it up if they hadn't seen it. The worst. He takes a stone cold stunner and like just basically falls out of his hands and then flops out of the ring. Just looks absolutely terrible. And then it's just everything's business as usual, even though he's almost 77 years at that point. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of allegations just start coming out and coming to light about. I mean, allegations are pretty much. This is like he's like the
paid out.
This is like the Bill Cosby wrestling. Like everybody knew it. Like everybody knew he's a womanizer. He apparently. It's no secret that him and his wife Linda haven't even lived in the same house for the last 10 years.
Oh.
Yeah, they're just a public couple, and that's it. And like they just won't get divorced for all sorts of reasons.
Okay.
Run the same company or ran it, and then all these allegations started popping up. But before that, Stephanie basically got let go as like she was head of creative for a long time, and then she became head of marketing and trying to expand her career.
What's head of creative do?
Head of creative is what writes. That's the head of creative, which right now is Triple H, basically. Because he had a lot of experience running NXT, their feeder system for the last couple of years. They write the TV show. Head of creative is the one who makes the final call, and it was Vince for like 30 years, or even longer. Like he's the last. They have a team of writers, some wrestling fans, some wrestlers, some Hollywood people, that ex-sitcom writers, and they've ups and downs with that. But the head of creative is the one that takes everything and goes, okay, makes the final call. Like this happens, that happens, whatever, makes the decisions. Head of creative who has ideas for who gets a gimmick, who doesn't need a gimmick, whose gimmick needs to be changed or what have you. Like, and Stephanie had done that for a long time, and then she transitioned. But she had done that, but Vince was always like the CEO, so he would always he was hands on. So Vince. Stephanie might have been the head writer, but he was always head of creative. She's transitioned over to marketing at some point because she wants to start building her business career. This is like 2014 or maybe even before that. She had done that for a long time. And then just like Shane, all of a sudden she just gets bounced out, basically citing like poor performance, like you're not doing too well, or some weird thing where like everybody was like, why would Vince just like coldly just kick his daughter out like that for so many years?
Well, I was trying to figure that out because when I read the original statements that they were saying, it was like, oh, well, she stepped down to take care of family, and I'm like,
when you hear that in real sports, do you believe it then? No,
that's what I was like. It's a family business,
right? Business, right? What family? The one daughter's the eldest daughter of Triple H and Stephanie, Aurora Rose, is like 16 and already starting to train to become a wrestler. Like,
which one's Aurora Rose?
She's the oldest daughter of Triple H and Stephanie. They have 3 daughters.
Whoa,
Aurora Rose.
Who that is?
Yeah, Aurora Rose Levesque is the oldest daughter. She's 16 and she is actively training. It came out. Sorry, it came out. He was using
the company funds to
money,
pay him off,
which he thought was a gray area because he's like, well, he is the company.
The company,
and it's so it's not really the money; it's his money. But whatever. The board of directors, of any company is going to be like above the company, looking down on it, and they were just even above him. Sorry, Vince. Yeah, you're not God. Right. I really don't like Vince McMahon, by the way. Everybody out there, I really think he's a piece of shit, and I don't want him to come back. But so,
no, that's fine. If you.
And the board of directors is just like, okay, now it's come out that you're fucking with the money. You're
right.
You're fucking the money. Don't fuck the money. That's the last thing you do. Everybody knows that. And so they finally voted they basically advised, like, they voted him to step down, but he willingly stepped down. They allowed him to be like, okay, I'm going to make the choice. When in fact, they were just basically like, step down or you know, we're going to shut the company. Whatever a board of directors can do to a company, like,
Oh,
they're like,
okay.
you need to step down. This is terrible. This is a bad look. It's time for you to retire. You're not going to recover from this. They're not going to let this go. Like this isn't like one, you know, Chris Benoit dying and it's horrible and we have a drug testing and we need to look at the effects of CTE, and then this is like, no, you were paying off women that you were having an affair with and telling them to shut the hell up with company money. Like that's it. You can't ignore this, especially nowadays where like nothing is forgotten. So, and it's all on record. So he finally, this past July, I even remember the day, July 22nd, right before my birthday too, because I'll never forget that day because I was so fucking happy that he was. I was
We're not
so
lying.
happy.
I saw your post.
Oh, so I guess good riddance, monster. Like, and not just because, you know, he'd been writing shitty wrestling and you know, the product has been good. Like, I'm not that much of a nerd. Like, he's also a piece of shit. You know, he's a womanizing, racist piece of shit, although he doesn't realize how racist he is. But anyway, he finally steps down, and then Triple H steps up, at least as head of creative, as the COO, not CEO. And then they bring Stephanie back in to be co-CEO with this other dude, Nick Khan, no related to Tony. The product immediately got better. Every pay-per-view since then has been really, really good. Like every pay-per-view. They've done things that Vince didn't want to do because Vince would just make unilateral decisions and be like, I'm not interested. The whole War Games, the whole 2 rings and a cage around everything, which that was a type of match that they had in other federations for a long time, but he had no interest in it. He didn't want it. As soon as he's gone, Triple H is like, bring the cage in. Like immediately, like, we're going to fix Survivor Series. The show's sucked for years now. Bring it in. Like he does that. The Raw is still hard to get through because it's 3 hours, you know. And the only reason it's 3 hours is because USA Network wants it to be 3 hours because they don't have any good shows. They don't have any good shows anymore. You know, this isn't the glory. Back when they had Psych and what was the Tony? What was the Monk? When they had those shows like Psych and Monk and Burn Notice and shit like that. That's when Raw was 2 hours. But USA don't have any good shows anymore, so they want. They're the ones who insist on Raw being 3 hours all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, you people are going to learn today. You're going to learn more about wrestling than you ever fucking wanted.
Dude, bring it, bro. That's why I brought you on, man.
So he steps down from that, and and everybody's like, wrestling fans like me are like, oh yes, thank God. And I've been enjoying it as a result. SmackDown in particular, because SmackDown has been consistently really good, like shockingly good. And like Triple H wound up bringing back, I don't know if you noticed this, there was a big controversy in 2020 where Vince fired like 40 wrestlers during the pandemic. Like
pandemic got laid off.
So many got laid off because they were stripping down for various reasons. And like they've been, people have been thinking they've been preparing for a sale for a long time because they were just letting people go. They've been cutting down. I mean, remember how like even like the stupidest little like B show would have like a different set, you know, and there would be like a different theme, and the entranceway would be different, and you know and the posters, and now like every single poster is just wrestling heads with the fucking show logo, and that's it. Lighting, instead of like creative art shoots and stuff like that. Like they really look like they've been preparing for a sale for a long time. But that's part 2 from this. So Vince steps down, everybody's happy, like, okay, this is what's going to keep him away. And then right at the end of December, there was rumblings like, wait a minute, like people started reporting like Vince is talking about coming back. Everybody knows Vince, like he's a workaholic. Apparently, even at the age of 77, he still only sleeps about 3-4 hours a night. He's insane. He does his favorite workout is at 2 a.m. He does 2 a.m. workouts for weights and stuff. Like that's his favorite time to work out. Like literally starting at 2 a.m. and so everyone's like, what's the rumble about him coming back? And like, he's always been the largest shareholder. He's always had the most shares, and because of that, he's been able to do certain things. And what he did was he basically decided to use his shares to come back, and the board took it to a vote where they're like, do we want Vince McMahon to come back in the company, not as CEO yet, but as chairman? You know, do we want to make Vince chairman of the board? And they unanimously voted no, including Stephanie and Triple H. They were like, no, it's not a good idea. You shouldn't do it. But because he has the most shares, he was able to come in. He replaced 2 board, because he has the most shares. He replaced 2 board members to swing everything in his favor. When he did that, 2 more board members were like, fuck this, and left. like
Okay.
willingly stepped down. And then the third person was Stephanie, who was like, "Fuck this," and left.
Oh. Oh, okay.
So
Okay. Got it. Okay.
she was fired from marketing, and then she took
Okay.
over as CEO when Vince was had to step down. But now she willingly was like, "All right, I'm done."
I'm out.
And Triple H
Okay.
is the one. So right now, Triple H is still running creative. It's still
Okay.
pretty good. But Vince McMahon is came back in and sort of did a quote unquote hostile takeover, and he's chairman of the board. And according to him, he has nothing to do with creative. He's just purely, if they're working on a sale, they intend to sell the company this year.
Okay.
2 weeks ago, Triple H had a meeting on both shows, Raw and SmackDown, with all the wrestlers saying, like, all right, Vince is chairman of the board, blah, blah, blah. They're working on a sale. He's just doing business stuff. I'm still head of creative. Everything that's going on, other people you answer to, right, that since he's begun, you still answer to. Nothing has changed in that regard. We're still, everything that I've written is still what we've got planned. Work on that, blah, blah, blah. Everything's
Okay.
great. This past week, he's not involved with anything creative at all, just business.
Okay.
Last week, he had another meeting with everybody from each show where he says, all right, Vince has been consulting now, and we've been going through some stuff. And
No.
he's been pitching
Oh.
in and giving his ideas about what he thinks, but I'm still head of creative. I'm still the one who makes the decisions. But yeah, so they went from he's not doing anything to, all right, well, we are talking to him. So
Oh boy.
it might stay that way. I remember telling people, like, if you think Vince hasn't been the entire time, since July, if you don't think he's been on every conference call, if you don't think there's been a fucking little Vince box in Zoom, however they do their meetings in Teams, that's sitting there in the bottom as
Yep.
special consultant Vince McMahon, then you're an
Yeah.
idiot, because
Oh,
there's
yeah.
no way Vince steps back at like full from
No.
anything like that. He's
Mm-mm.
a super workaholic and obsessive control freak. So
Okay.
yeah, that's the status. That's the status of everything with Vince. It changes all the time. He's not back as head of creative, and if he ever becomes head of creative again, well, number one, he's 77 years old, so I hope he has a stroke at some point. And I don't feel bad about saying that, because so before anybody, can't cancel me because he's a monster. Okay, look it up.
I mean, for the uninitiated that don't know, I mean, people may have heard about Vince McMahon, and I didn't know how truly terrible of a person he was until I heard about what the Montreal Screw Job. Like, you introduced me to that. I watched the documentary that you showed me to, and if y'all have time, y'all should look that up because it was really fucked up what he did to Bret Hart. It was
Yeah, if you're
awful.
too young and you don't know how things went down with Bret Hitman Hart left the company, like, look that up and see what went
Yeah.
down. They mended fences eventually, but it took over 10 years to do so. Yep.
Yeah. And now that we're actually more so caught up to the present, and I know that pretty much a lot of people know how the Royal Rumble works and what it is, but for those that are the uninitiated, how would you describe the Royal Rumble and how is it different than the other pay-per-views that they usually put out?
Well, it's funny. For many years, they always had the big four pay-per-views, which was WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. But it starts with
Okay.
Royal Rumble in the January. And a long time ago, after like 5 Royal Rumbles, they decided, because there's been 30 Royal Rumbles at this point.
Okay.
And so they, after like Royal Rumble number 4, they were like, hey, you know what? The winner of this thing should go on to wrestle for the world title at or one of them, depending on how many they have, at WrestleMania. And so there's been there was a couple Rumbles where that wasn't a stipulation, but that's been the stipulation for a long time. But in wrestling, there's basically a match type called a battle royal. Those are those matches where if you ever look and you're not familiar, you see like 10, 20, 30 people in the ring at the same time, just aren't flailing around, hitting everything in sight, and people go flying over the top rope. That's a regular battle royal. Is they're all in there, the bell rings, beat the hell out of each other, throw each other out until there's only one person remaining. That's the winner. Royal Rumble is a concept that they came up with in the 80s. Some people, Pat Patterson, for if anybody's really nerdy. Shut up. I'm doing a podcast. My cat.
That's fine, dude.
Podcast, YouTube show. You don't understand. You're a cat.
Tell Tron I said, what's up, man?
I will if he shuts up. I love my cat. So they came up with in the 80s where like they would basically do intervals, usually 2 minutes, sometimes 90 seconds. It's better if it's 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes, they have 30 guys every 2 minutes, and women now. Every 2 minutes, somebody comes out to the ring. They do drawing backstage. Whoever draws number 1 is usually pissed off. Usually draws number 30 is super happy. obviously. They come out every 2 minutes and they throw each other over the top rope until there's one winner. One person at the end wins. They instituted a women's Royal Rumble for the first time in 2018, so now they have both. Unfortunately, in my opinion, they have them both on the same show. So now watching a Royal Rumble pay-per-view is you have to watch two Rumbles.
Yeah.
The Royal Rumble by its own very nature is at least an hour, like 50 minutes to an hour. It's every 90 seconds to 2-minute intervals. And it's super entertaining. It keeps you engaged.
Yeah.
Who's going to come out next? You don't know. Like, are there going to be surprises or anything like that? Like, what's going to happen? So it's always entertaining. And it's always fun. And the Women's Rumble is the same. It's always entertaining and it's always fun. But in my opinion, 2 Rumbles on the same show is just too much. Because a lot of women's wrestling is really, really good. Actually, the best wrestling in the world in the 90s was Japanese women's wrestling. And everybody, absolutely, they beat the shit out of each other. It was a huge deal in the country. So they had a women's pay-per-view called Evolution. It was really, really good. And in my opinion, they should have had it be a yearly show and put the Women's Rumble there. And if somebody goes like, well, that's not fair because the Royal Rumble is still always the men's one. It's like, yeah, but if you have an entire show dedicated to just women's wrestling and you put the Rumble there, in my opinion, it's like JR, in my opinion, quite frankly, like says it every 5 minutes on his podcast. It's just as equal in stature, I think. I think it pops up because I'm sorry, 2-hour-long Rumble matches on every show.
They've done it for anybody. Yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah, and I go ahead. No, go ahead.
I mean, and I don't want to say like, oh, you're telling me that it's a fun show and I should check it out and everything like that, but then you say it's too long. Not everybody agrees. A lot of people are just like, oh yeah, they want. Every time I say I think it should have its own show, they're just like, no, I think it's great to have it both in the same show. That's awesome. That's fine if that's. I just think it's overkill and it should be on a different show. But the greater point is like they instituted 2 Rumbles finally, and they've treated it pretty equally. They're over it. Was it 2018, 19, 20, 21? It's been like five women's Rumbles since then. And it's not like all of them have been booked poorly. No, like the first Women's Rumble was really good. I think like the 2020 Women's Rumble was really, really good. Like they book them fairly and they do a good job. Last year, both of the Rumbles sucked. So that was an outlier. It was, but it's, that's basically the Rumble show. They have them for both. And that's how it's structured. But because of that structure, it's really fun to watch because there's always the drama of who's coming up next. What are they going to do? They always book intricate spots. Like there's a bunch of shorter people in the ring, and then the bell rings, the buzzer rings, and somebody comes out and it's a giant. What are they going to deal with this huge thing? This huge person. Or you know what I mean? Like maybe the ring fills up and some badass comes out and just starts chucking people left and right. The crowd just gets super. Before, people love badass Roman Reigns now, but we hated Roman Reigns when they were pushing him as like the next John Cena. But before that, that Royal Rumble of 2014, that first one with Daniel Bryan, everybody's pissed off. Everybody loved him. Why? Because he threw out like 6 dudes in a row at one point. And everybody's like, all right, okay. Like this dude's kicking ass and like throwing people out. Like you get these spots like that during every single Rumble, almost every single Rumble show. So that's why it's always worth. And that's why for a lot of people, it's the second best show the year after WrestleMania. And for a lot of people, it's their favorite show, even more than WrestleMania.
I mean, as far as this year's Royal Rumble, like what's supposed to be, like the highlighted lineups and who's actually favored to like win this year?
Well, as far as the women's Rumble, I'm not really sure. They haven't like picked a cohesive like direction for what. There's nothing like screaming like, oh, this is going to happen for the women's wrestling. Like in 2019, that's when Becky Lynch. Some people may know now that this woman wrestler Becky Lynch with the orange hair and crazy outfits now, like she became like a big deal. It became like a big, almost like a female Stone Cold kind of thing. Mostly because her tweets were hilarious and she was able to make fun of people so effectively the way Stone Cold would do live in the ring. If Stone Cold had Twitter in 1997, it would have been the same thing. Yeah, it absolutely would have been the same thing. So like that was a clear direction there where it's like she's super over. She should win the women's title. We'll have the first female main event in WrestleMania history. Like that was a clear direction. This year, I don't know what the direction is for the women. Like they have more. They hired a bunch of women back that Vince let go, like a lot. So
Okay.
it's not going to be like last year where there were like 10 active people on the roster and a parade of like who, like people came out
Yeah.
and were like, oh, like if I never see Kelly again in wrestling, she was from that age of women's wrestling where they were just models and volleyball
Models.
players.
Oh
And
yeah.
they tried to teach to be a
Yeah.
wrestler, and God bless her, she sucked. Like nothing against nothing against her as a person, but she sucked. Yeah, no, I'm serious. Any wrestling fans like, yeah, that was not good. There was a lot like she's probably agreed, but like so they like trotting that back out. So hopefully there'll be a lot less of that because they hired a bunch more. So I think it's sometimes the Rumble makes somebody, and I think that this year the Rumble is like possibly going to make somebody. Actually, one of the odds-on favorites now that I remember, it's this woman Rhea Ripley, who is
Okay.
she looks like if she fought dudes, you'd be like, yeah, I buy it completely. Like she's a bruiser. She's built. She's strapping. She's like a metal fan. So she's not covered in tattoos, but she has like a bunch and they're prominent. And she's working with this group called Judgment Day. That are a group of villains that are kind of like a weird kind of cult kind of thing, but they're also funny. They're not like the Wyatt family cult, if you remember them.
Okay.
They're not like
Yo, yeah.
scary weird. Yeah, they're just like they're kind of. I don't even know what the direction is. But they're villains and they wear a lot of black, but they're also funny sometimes. So
Okay.
she's the favorite. She was a finalist, I think, in 2021. She almost won it, and people have been like, yeah, she's been really killing it. She's been attacking guys lately on the Raw, and
Oh, nice.
they've been doing the
Okay.
whole thing where guys are like, oh my, like this chick, like stay away from her. She's just as bad as the dudes in the group. Like, holy shit.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's been pretty cool. So she's a favorite. The men's Rumble,
Yeah.
they got a bit of a situation going.
Please explain, sir.
Everybody for a while now, most of the year, been thinking it's going to be Cody Rhodes. Cody
Right.
Rhodes, the son of Dusty Rhodes, or one of
Yes.
the sons of Dusty Rhodes, his brother of Goldust, if anybody remembers him. He was in WWE for a minute. They never did much
Yeah.
with him. He got frustrated. He left. He helped start up the AEW Federation, which LJ and I
Yeah.
really really love, and we would watch with Justin Ice.
Oh yeah.
Back here in Philly, and it looked like he was one of their pillars, as they call it, and he was going to be a major part of that federation, and he was
Mhm.
for 2.5 years until early
Yeah.
2022 when he shocked everybody and said, "Yeah, I didn't re-sign my contract. I'm out," and went back.
Yeah.
And it's mostly just because he just felt he had done everything he could do in setting up AEW, and the people he was working with,
Oh.
yeah, the people he
Okay.
was working with didn't want him. He was getting a lot of boos, and they wanted him to turn heel, but he didn't want to. He wanted to be,
Really?
yeah, he wanted to be a superhero. He wanted to be a face, just like John Cena. He's
Really?
basically doing like a Cena kind of thing, where it's like, why won't you just turn heel? Well, they would
Yeah.
let
It
they
would
would
have
let Cena
worked.
turn heel, but he just didn't want to do it. And they were like, well, and the difference between AEW is AEW doesn't care about like, well, you sell the merchandise. Like the AEW is just like, no, everybody's booing you, dude. You're a heel. Like,
Be a heel.
sorry.
Right.
Yeah. And so he just decided to leave, not on bad terms. It's still good terms, but
Okay.
he went back to WWE, and we all wondered how Vince would treat him because he didn't do anything when he was there before. Oh my, he came out
Right.
to the same music. He had a huge debut at WrestleMania where he beat Seth Rollins, which is like a major level
He
player.
beat Seth Rollins?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wow.
They had a really good
Wow.
feud. They had a 3 pay-per-view feud, WrestleMania and the next 2 shows, and they were
Okay.
all great matches. They had a really good, really well done for him. They treated him with respect. And when he came back, he made this promo on Raw where he was like, "I vow, this year to win not to win the world title at some point. My father, Dusty Rhodes, never won the WWE title, and he was never really
Oh.
there for very long, but."
Okay.
That's like one of the major world championships he never won, and I want to do it for my brother Goldust. He didn't win the world title either. Like, I want to do this for my family. He made this whole big chest pounding, like, I'm going to do this for my friends, my family, like, and my honor is a Rhodes, and he's fighting Seth Rollins, and it's awesome. And then before Hell in a Cell, he's going to fight Seth Rollins at a big, Hell in a Cell scary cage match kind of deal. And the training, 2 days in training before he does that, he rips the shit out of his pec and like right off like maybe like right off the bone or something like different,
Yeah.
like right is what's it, I guess it was on actually his right pec, and everybody's
Okay.
like, oh no. And then he does something even more crazy in the nowadays where they do a lot of medical testing, and since they learned from Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit and all these people that died, like
Yeah.
not just drugs, but also just like CTE and injuries and shit. They let him work the match, and if
Really?
you might there's a famous photo and a gif of him taking his jacket off and just like he's just got one black titty. It's hilarious. It's hilarious, but also like you cringe. He's got one. He's got his whole right pec and his shoulder and arm. It's all just black and blue. This
Mm.
huge, hideous, like expanding, like well, he does have liquid in his skin. It's called blood. Like it just cracked, and you could see it like seeping out. And he worked the match
Mm.
in incredible pain. He talked to a doctor who said, like, as long as you don't do certain things, you're not going to you can't make it any worse than it is. It's already
Okay.
torn and just torn. Like that's it. So it's just going to hurt like hell. And so they shot him up. I forget what they shoot him up sometimes with something that just
Mhm.
kills the pain. And he worked it, and it was a great match. And everybody was like, "Oh my god!" Like you're like, I can't look away because this is hideous. But like, he's like, and he wins the match, and it's like this, triumphant moment. And then he immediately goes into rehab and, you know, into surgery after that. And he's been that way. So that happened in June. So he's been on the
Wow.
shelf since June. And they finally, I kind of wish they didn't advertise that he's back at the Royal Rumble. I kind of wanted it to be like a surprise
Surprise. Okay.
of many people that have come back over the years, but I guess they just decided like, nope, we're going to let you know that he's coming back. And it seemed that was a foregone conclusion. He's going to come back. He's going to win the Rumble. He's going to do what he said. He's going to beat. They've been an unbeatable heel champion, Roman Reigns. They finally turned Roman Reigns heel a couple of years ago, and he's just been ruling over everything as this like unstoppable monster heel champion. Unified the belts. He beat Brock Lesnar a bunch of times, which
Oh.
the only way you do
Yes.
that is you give Brock Lesnar dump trucks full of money, and so they gave him enough money to do
It's either
that.
money or Suplex City, bitch.
That's or it's either the money or they're no Brock, bitch, and he just leaves and doesn't. And you're not going to stop him because everybody's terrified of this man. Why would you piss this man off? Give him what he wants. Yeah. So that seemed to be the foregone conclusion. But then they started doing this storyline now, the bloodline. Roman Reigns,
Okay.
his group, the big heel champion I mentioned, like he's got the Samoans. There's a lot of Samoans in wrestling. There's a couple of families, and he's
Mhm.
got 3 cousins that he's working with, and they call it the bloodline.
Okay.
And they started this storyline where this one wrestler, Sami Zayn, a longtime favorite of mine. He's been a heel for a while now, which is weird. Everybody, one of those Vince things where we're like, he was such an awesome babyface, and babyface, by the way, means like superhero, like the good guy, babyface that everybody loved in NXT. And he came up the main roster in like 2016 and was kind of used that way, but Vince just didn't see him the same way, and so he never really pushed him. And eventually, like he became heel, and he's been really this really entertaining heel shtick is like this crazy kind of like annoying heel kind of thing. And they started a storyline where he wanted to be part of the bloodline so bad, a bunch of Samoan dudes, and he's like this like Snow White red haired guy who's actually part Syrian. He just doesn't look it
Okay.
from Canada, from Quebec, and like this storyline with like him and his best friend Kevin Owens, who he works with, who they've had
Oh,
a
yeah.
love-hate thing, is like trying to convince him that like they're using him and they don't really love him, but he loves them. And it's really engaging. And again, a male soap opera, an action soap opera,
Yeah.
if you don't want to use the male, like an action soap opera kind of way, where everybody's like they're using him as a patsy, but he just wants their acceptance. And there's been all sorts of twists and turns. And as a result, the crowd is like super into Sami Zayn. They're like
Huh.
really behind him, is like, he just wants to make you proud. Why won't you love him? Damn it. Like kind of thing like that. And it's been working. And if you're a wrestling fan long enough, anybody like that eventually is going to get punked out
But oh
hard
yeah.
at some point, because it's been for ever since wrestling came about, ever since the first time it was on TV in the 40s. Like, you get somebody that's a super white meat baby face that everybody loves. At some point, you take that person and you step the fuck on him in the dirt, and it makes you hate that person that did that, and you want to root for that guy. And even they can be a heel and like a lovable heel and still be rehab that way. And so now there's this big movement for people to be like, let Sami Zayn should win the Rumble, and it's like that's the story where everybody's like, where Roman, is just like, well, now you get a title shot at WrestleMania, but like you should give it up. It parallels an old angle with Ric Flair and Sting in the 90s.
Okay.
That I remember watching as a kid, a big deal where they turned on him for the same thing. Like, you should abdicate that title shot, and which is like, well, no, I earned it. Like, well, then we're going to beat the hell out of you. It's really easy storytelling. So that's the thing. They've got two really, really compelling storylines. Like who's it going to be? Like,
Okay.
should it be Cody or should it be Sammy? And we really don't know what it's going to be. But I can see how it being a problem for them. We're like, well, this was easy. It was going to be Cody. Now they're worried about Cody winning and getting booed because everybody wants
Oh.
Sammy to win the Royal Rumble, and the whole Daniel Bryan situation. They don't want that to happen again. But
Hmm.
I don't know. Like if Cody could come out and everybody will be super happy and cheer for him. So maybe it won't be that way. It's like a problem, but maybe it's a good problem to have. But you're just not really sure. But anyway, those are the favorites, and they're only the
Okay.
favorites, and they may be the favorites. But the difference is without Vince writing the product. If Vince was writing the
Oh.
product, one of the favorites would be whoever Vince likes.
As we kind of close out, I actually wanted to ask your opinion on something because I knew that you were telling me about it, and I didn't even hear about this. Like, and it's deep into entertainment as I am. I hadn't heard it from any entertainment outlets. You broke a story to me about Chris Hemsworth is actually working on doing the Hulk Hogan biopic. So, you being the wrestling aficionado that I know you are, what are your thoughts on that?
I, I, I remember like hearing about it, like okay, they're finally going to make a Hulk Hogan biopic, Hulk Hogan movie, and like who's going to play? We don't know. And was when it was announced for Chris Hemsworth, I think my reaction was the same as everybody else's. There, you start thinking of like the body, like the being that tall and being able to be like super muscle. Although Hulk was never like ripped muscle. Like he always was like thick. He was like steroid bloat, as they called it. Like the muscles
Yes.
were big, but they weren't like super cut. Also,
Right.
because in the '80s, like every single wrestler drank a case of beer after the match, basically. So they just
Yeah,
didn't
I
do
agree.
that. So like he's got the size, he's blonde, and like I just didn't know about being able to act like him. Like
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan's got such he was a superstar because of the charisma and the distinctability, but
Right.
actually, as I told myself, I'm like, I remember hearing about Heath Ledger being the Joker in The Dark Knight and being like, that sounds so. Why him? Who is this dude? Like, that's gonna play the Joker? That's stupid. And then you watch the thing, and even though I know Justin Ice, I can hear him right now in Delaware. He's just like, that's not the Joker. He wasn't the Joker. That wasn't the best Joker of all time. The most truest Joker is still Jack Nicholson from the
Oh yeah.
comics.
Oh yeah.
Dark Knight is not the Batman movie. It's an interpretation, basically. All the Nolan Batman
Right.
movies were like an interpretation. But in terms of performance, I didn't know anything. I think he was in that. Was it A Knight's Tale? Is it the thing that Heath Ledger did?
Yeah.
But just little
Before
small
that,
roles,
yeah.
and he absolutely killed it and did this like incredible performance that nobody knew he had, and nobody had any. And ever since then, I'm like, okay, just because I don't think it'll work doesn't mean that Chris Hemsworth can't totally turn it on and turn into Hulk Hogan and do it right. He definitely has the size, he has the look, he has charisma. I could see him. He can turn it on, and he can have like that kind of a bit of range. Hulk Hogan in general, like if you ever hear him talk in interviews, he's very much like just monotone and relaxed, and
He
but since
is.
Marty's from California, like surfer, kind of deal. And then the red light goes on, and he's like, "Listen, dude," and just immediately erupts into this like, "Holy shit, where did this person come from?" Because he knows how to turn it on. Well,
Right.
I can see Hemsworth knowing how to turn it on and like understanding that aspect. So I'll reserve judgment. Is the end of the
Okay.
day. Were
But
you looking at it like, what is this? Like,
I mean, I
really?
know he could. I know he's probably gonna be able to rock the handlebar mustache. That's not gonna be a problem.
Yeah,
And I know that he can turn himself into the Thor of Thor 1 and 2 is my version of Thor. When I think about Thor in my mind.
right.
Ragnarok in the Love and Thunder thing, I was like, it's more of making fun of him. So I'm like, if he can
Yeah.
turn it on like that and be that charismatic that I've seen in the first two Thor movies, I'll give it a shot. I don't think I've ever
And
the only wrestling kind of biopic that I saw was The Wrestler, and I didn't know Mickey Rourke had that in him at all.
yeah, he did that. He
So
did that really. Yeah, he did that really,
yeah,
really well. Yeah, yeah. And
so
that was,
yeah,
but that movie was more like this is what it's like for
lit-
wrestlers afterwards. When the stars
right.
faded or they're just doing indies and they just can't stop. This is the life they know and they can't stop.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's what I'm saying. If I can give Mickey Rourke a shot, and the last movie I saw him was like 9.5 weeks, go figure. But I'm
yeah,
like, if I can give that guy a shot, then I can give Chris Hemsworth a shot at playing Hulk Hogan. So either way, for me, it's gonna be interesting when it comes out. I'm gonna have to bring you back on because you know all the stuff that normally people wouldn't know about Hulk Hogan in different aspects. So I'm gonna have you come in and be like, a dOGulas true Hollywood story of Hulk Hogan. As far as for the podcast that we've got on today, That's pretty much all we've got. I'm definitely going to have this man back on in the future. But Douglas, do you have any socials or any groups that you're in that you want to let people know about to follow you and your exploits?
You admit the for wrestling goes, you look the big one, the WTF on wrestling's true fans on Facebook. If you guys want to join, just in the reason why or whatever like that, just say that you saw me on this show. You caught dOGulas on LJ's show on the Left Eye E.G.O, and I'm one of the admins, so I'll see it and just be like, okay, you're going, but I checked. That's that's the password, the secret password to get into that. I don't have I'm not an influencer. I don't have a big social media presence, although I am on it. I mean, you can find me on Facebook. Type in dOGulas, just as you see here. Like that's you'll definitely find it. If anybody likes industrial or electronic music in general, UCNX is my main project. You can find that and look that up on Insta. Same thing for dOGulas too. Just the same general places. Not Twitter. I could never give a fuck about Twitter. I think I did 3 tweets in 2009 and never looked back. So yeah, Instagram, Facebook, UCNX online and on YouTube for some of the music stuff. And you'll also catch me commenting on a lot of cold cases and a lot of theories I have. We'll talk about that in a future episode.
Guys, for dOGulas, for now, E.G.O out.